Grace Mitchell had never been the kind of woman who second-guessed her decisions. 34 years old, hands that could disassemble a Glock 9mm in 14 seconds, or fold fitted sheets into perfect squares with equal precision, wearing a floral apron over clothes from Target that were specifically chosen to look forgettable. The apron had small sunflowers on it, cheerful, domestic. Exactly the kind of thing a housewife who spent her days cleaning a billionaire's mansion would wear. But today, standing in the marble kitchen of the Castellano estate, watching her employer through the security monitor as he conducted a meeting she wasn't supposed to see, Grace understood that 3 years of deep cover were about to pay off in ways that would either make her career or end her life. She was supposed to be folding laundry. That's what Tuesdays meant in the Castellano household. Sheets from the master bedroom, towels from the guest bathrooms, cloth napkins from last night's dinner party, where 12 men in expensive suits had discussed shipping routes and port access, while their wives admired the wine cellar Grace had organized by region and vintage. But the laundry could wait, because Victor Castellano, real estate developer, philanthropist, owner of 17 luxury properties across 3 states, and according to 3 years of FBI surveillance, the largest fentanyl distributor on the East Coast, had just made a mistake. He'd left his office door open, just a crack, just enough for the hidden camera Grace had installed in the hallway smoke detector to capture audio from the meeting happening inside. Grace adjusted the wireless earbud hidden beneath her hair, styled in the kind of practical mom cut that made people assume she had kids in elementary school, and listened. "The shipment arrives Thursday," Victor's voice. Smooth, confident, the voice of a man who'd never been questioned by anyone about anything. 200 kilos, distributed through the usual channels, payment on delivery. Another voice. Accented, Russian, Grace thought. She'd been studying his associates for 3 years. This was probably Dmitry Volkov, arms dealer who'd pivoted to pharmaceuticals when the margins proved better. "Security?" Dmitry asked. "Handled. Port inspector is ours. Customs agent is ours. If anything goes wrong, we have 3 backup routes and enough lawyers to bury any investigation for 5 years. Grace's hand tightened on the dish towel she was holding. 200 kilos of fentanyl. Enough to kill hundreds of thousands of people. Enough to warrant a federal task force that had been building this case since before she'd applied for the housewife position through an agency Victor's wife used. Her real name wasn't Grace Mitchell. It was Grace Chen. Special Agent Grace Chen, Drug Enforcement Administration. 8 years in narcotics, 2 undercover operations before this one. But nothing as deep, nothing as long. Nothing where she'd spent 3 years scrubbing toilets and organizing pantries and serving coffee to men who discussed murder with the casual tone most people used to talk about golf. "The girl," Victor said. "The housekeeper, Grace. She's been here how long?" Grace froze. The dish towel dropped from her hands. 3 years, another voice answered. Marcus Rourke, Victor's head of security, ex-military. The kind of man who noticed things other people missed. Background check came back clean when we hired her. Single mother, 2 kids. Needed the money. References checked out. All fabricated. The references were DEA agents playing roles. The kids existed only in framed photos. Grace kept in her room stock images from the internet printed on glossy paper and placed strategically where Victor's security sweeps would find them. "Run it again," Victor said. Grace's pulse spiked. "Why?" "Because I saw her looking at the guest list from last week's party. saw her take a photo of it with her phone before she threw it away. That photo. Grace had needed documentation of who'd attended, names for the investigation. She'd been careful, waited until she was alone, used a burner phone, deleted the image immediately after uploading it to the encrypted server. But Victor had cameras she didn't know about, or Marcus had been watching more carefully than she'd realized. Could be innocent, Marcus said. Some of these help get starstruck. They see billionaires and politicians, and they want proof they were in the same room. Or she's law enforcement, Victor said. Run the background again, deep this time. I want to know every place she's lived, every job she's had, every person she's ever spoken to. And Marcus? Yes? If anything comes back wrong, anything at all, handle it quietly. Grace understood what handle it quietly meant. She'd seen what happened to people who threatened Victor Castellano's operation. The assistant who'd stolen $50,000 had disappeared. The accountant who'd started asking questions about offshore accounts had been found in the Hudson River. The dealer who'd tried to negotiate better terms had simply stopped existing. She had maybe 48 hours before Marcus's deep background check started finding holes in her cover story. 48 hours before the DEA legend, the false identity they'd built for her, started showing cracks that someone like Marcus Rourke would notice. Grace picked up the dish towel with hands that didn't shake, forced herself to breathe normally. Walked to the laundry room like nothing had changed, but everything had changed, because 3 years of careful investigation were about to come to a head, and Grace had to decide: pull out now, save her life, and lose the case that would take down the biggest fentanyl operation on the East Coast, or stay in place, gather the evidence she needed for Thursday's shipment, and hope she survived long enough to testify. She pulled out her real phone hidden inside a false bottom in her cleaning supply caddy and sent a coded text to her handler. Cover potentially blown. Castellano suspicious. Major shipment Thursday. Need extraction plan but staying for evidence. Chen. The response came in 30 seconds. Negative on extraction. Too dangerous. Pull out now. We'll find another way. Martinez. Grace stared at the message, at the order to abandon 3 years of work, at the safe choice that would save her life but let Victor Castellano keep killing people with drugs he imported with impunity. She deleted the message, turned off the phone, went back to folding laundry, because some operations required you to risk everything. And some monsters were too dangerous to let walk away just because staying was safer than finishing the job. Grace Mitchell, the housewife who didn't exist, had 2 days to gather enough evidence to destroy Victor Castellano's empire, and Special Agent Grace Chen had 2 days to stay alive long enough to make it count. That evening, Grace served dinner like she had 1,000 times before. Victor sat at the head of the table, his wife Elena at the other end, and their daughter Sophia, 16 years old, preparing for college applications, completely unaware her father's wealth came from destroying families, sat picking at her salmon. Grace, this is perfect as always, Elena said. She was kind, genuine, the type of woman who asked about Grace's fake children and remembered their fake birthdays. It made the deception harder. Thank you, Mrs. Castellano. Victor didn't look up from his phone. Grace, I'm having guests Thursday evening, late dinner. 12 people. Can you handle that? Thursday, the night of the shipment. He wanted her there, working, serving food to the men who'd just imported enough fentanyl to supply the entire eastern seaboard. Of course, Mr. Castellano. What time should I prepare for? 10 m. They're coming after a business meeting. Something light. Antipasti. Wine. You know what they like. She did know. 3 years of studying their preferences, their habits, their patterns. Dmitri liked Russian vodka served ice cold. Marcus Rourke didn't drink on duty. Senator Thompson, yes, a sitting United States senator, preferred bourbon and talked too much when he had 3 glasses. I'll prepare everything. Victor finally looked at her. Really looked at her. Grace met his eyes with the bland pleasantness of someone whose biggest concern was whether the arugula would be fresh enough. "You've been with us 3 years, Victor said. "Yes, sir. 3 wonderful years. Elena speaks very highly of you. Says you're the best housekeeper we've ever had. That's very kind of her. My daughter trusts you. She talks to you about college applications, about boys, about things she doesn't tell her mother." Grace felt ice in her veins. Sophia did talk to her. The girl was lonely, isolated by wealth and private security. She'd latched onto Grace as something close to a friend. It was the part of this operation that haunted Grace at night, the knowledge that when this came down, Sophia would learn that the woman she'd trusted was a federal agent who'd been using her family. "Sophia's a wonderful young woman," Grace said carefully. "So I need to ask you something, Grace. And I need you to be honest with me." Here it comes, Grace thought. He knows. He's testing me. Marcus found something. "Of course, Mr. Castellano. Are you happy here? Because if there's anything you need a raise, different hours, anything, I want you to tell me. Good help is hard to find. And your family to us now." Grace felt the words land like a punch. Family. The word people used when they meant we trust you completely. The word that made betrayal unforgivable. "I'm very happy here," Grace said. "You and Mrs. Castellano have been incredibly generous. This job saved my life when I needed it most." That part was true. The legend they'd built for Grace Mitchell included a messy divorce, crushing debt, and desperation that made a housekeeping job at a billionaire's estate feel like salvation. People believed desperate stories because desperate people did desperate things for money. Victor nodded slowly. "Good. Because Thursday night is important. These are crucial business partners. Everything needs to be perfect. It will be." After dinner, Grace cleaned the kitchen while listening through her earbud to Victor's phone call with Marcus. The security chief was in his office, running the deep background check. "The employment history checks out so far," Marcus said. "Previous jobs, references, addresses. But I'm finding gaps. 3 months here, 6 months there. Periods where she wasn't working anywhere on record." Grace's pulse quickened. Those gaps were when she'd been at DEA training, when she'd been testifying in previous cases, when Special Agent Chen had existed and Grace Mitchell had not. "What kind of gaps?" Victor asked. "Could be cash jobs, babysitting, cleaning houses without reporting income. A lot of single mothers do that to avoid taxes. Or she was doing something she doesn't want on record. Keep digging. I want to know everything by Wednesday morning." Grace had 24 hours before Marcus found something that wouldn't add up. 24 hours before her legend started collapsing. She needed to accelerate the timeline. She pulled out her burner phone, the one Victor's people didn't know about, and texted her handler again. "Need backup Thursday. Shipment arriving 10 p.m. Will document everything. Can't pull out now. Too close. Chen." The response was immediate and angry. "Chen, this is a direct order. Extract now. You're burned. Get out." Martinez, "If I leave, we lose 3 years of work, and Castellano walks. I'm staying. Send backup, or don't. I'm finishing this." Chen, no response for 5 minutes. Then, "You're going to get yourself killed." Backup team will be on standby 2 blocks away. You have a panic button? Martinez Grace looked at the small device sewn into the lining of her apron. Press it 3 times, and a tactical team would storm the estate within 90 seconds. But 90 seconds was a long time when someone like Marcus Rourke decided you were a threat. I have it. See you on the other side. Chen. The next morning, Wednesday, Grace was dusting Victor's office when she found something that changed everything. She wasn't supposed to be in his office. Victor was out at a meeting. Elena was at Pilates. Sophia was at school. Marcus was downstairs reviewing security footage. The cleaning staff, Grace and 2 others who came twice a week, had strict instructions never to enter Victor's private office. But Grace had been looking for an opportunity like this for 3 years. The office was where Victor kept his real records, not the legitimate business files in the study, not the sanitized accounting in the cloud. The real records, the ones that showed exactly how much money flowed through his drug operation. She had 7 minutes before the other staff finished the West Wing and would notice she wasn't where she was supposed to be. Grace moved quickly. The desk had a false bottom she'd identified months ago using a portable scanner. She popped it open with a tool disguised as a cleaning cloth clip. Inside, 3 USB drives, a ledger, and a burner phone. Grace photographed everything with a camera the size of a button, downloaded the USB drives to her own encrypted device, copied contact numbers from the burner phone, and then she found the file that made her blood run cold, a dossier on her. On Grace Mitchell. Marcus had been investigating her longer than she'd realized. The file had photos of her entering the estate, background check results, employment verification. But there was more. Handwritten notes in Marcus's precise script. Subject: maintains eye contact too long for domestic staff. Observes rather than serves. Asked about shipping schedules twice under guise of preparing meals. Photographed guest list, possible law enforcement training, and, at the bottom, dated yesterday, recommendation, terminate employment. Potential federal agent, await confirmation before action. Grace's hands shook as she photographed the dossier. Marcus knew. He'd known for weeks, maybe months. He'd been building his own case against her while she'd been building hers against Victor. She had maybe hours before terminate employment became literal. Grace was closing the false compartment when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Not the soft steps of cleaning staff, the deliberate, measured footsteps of Marcus Rourke. She moved faster than her Grace Mitchell persona should be able to move. Closed the compartment, straightened the desk, grabbed her dust cloth, and was pretending to clean the bookshelf when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Grace, what are you doing in here?" She turned, affecting surprise and guilt. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Rourke. Mrs. Castellano asked me to dust the books. I know Mr. Castellano prefers I don't come in here, but she was very specific. Mrs. Castellano is at Pilates. She asked me this morning before she left. I can come back later." If Marcus studied her, Grace could see him evaluating, calculating, deciding whether to believe the clumsy lie or act on his suspicions. "Finish quickly," he said finally. "And Grace, don't come in here again without Mr. Castellano's explicit permission. Understood?" "Yes, sir, I'm sorry." He left, but Grace knew he'd be watching camera footage within minutes, timing how long she'd been in the office, reviewing what she'd touched, building his case. She had 12 hours until Thursday's shipment. 12 hours until she could document the arrival of 200 kilos of fentanyl and bring down Victor Castellano's entire operation. But first she had to survive until Thursday. If you've ever had to hide who you really are to survive in a dangerous situation, drop a comment. Tell us how long you had to pretend, because this story is about to show you that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most harmless. That afternoon, Grace received a text on her legitimate phone, the one Grace Mitchell used, from Elena Castellano. Grace, can you pick up Sophia from school? Driver is sick, and I'm stuck at appointment. School dismisses at 3. Thank you. It was a trap. Grace knew it immediately. The driver wasn't sick. This was Marcus testing her, seeing if she'd do something that broke character, if she'd make contact with someone, if she'd deviate from the pattern of behavior Grace Mitchell had established over 3 years. But she couldn't refuse. Grace Mitchell was the reliable housekeeper who always said yes, who never complicated things, who was grateful for the job and would do anything to keep it. Grace drove Victor's wife's Mercedes to the private school where Sophia attended. She waited in the pickup line with other drivers and nannies, saw Sophia come out with her backpack and tennis racket. The girl climbed in, smiling. Thanks for picking me up, Grace. Mom said the driver was sick. That's what she told me. You okay? You seem stressed. Grace forced a smile. Just a busy week. Your father has important guests Thursday night. I'm making sure everything's perfect. Sophia's expression shifted, became guarded. Those dinner parties, with Dad's business friends. Yes. Grace, can I ask you something, and will you tell me the truth? Danger. Grace felt it like static electricity. Of course, sweetheart. What does my dad really do? Like, I know he's in real estate, but the men who come to those parties, they're not normal businessmen. And sometimes I hear things, conversations I'm not supposed to hear. Grace's training told her to deflect, to protect the operation, to maintain cover at all costs. But looking at Sophia's face, this 16-year-old girl who'd been raised in luxury built on death, Grace saw something she hadn't let herself see before, an innocent victim who deserved the truth. Sophia, your father is a very successful businessman. But success sometimes comes with complicated relationships. People who are criminals, Sophia said quietly. That's what you mean, right? Grace pulled the car over. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't protocol. But sometimes humanity mattered more than procedure. Why do you think that? Grace asked carefully. Because I'm not stupid. Because I see the cash in Dad's safe. Because men with Russian accents don't buy real estate at midnight meetings. Because my chemistry teacher did a whole unit on the fentanyl crisis. And I recognized one of the names he mentioned as someone who had dinner at our house. Grace's mind raced. Sophia knew, or suspected. How much? How long? Have you told anyone? Who would I tell? My mother won't listen. My father scares me. My friends wouldn't understand. And everyone else. Sophia looked at Grace. Everyone else works for my father. Except you. You're different. You actually care about me. The words hit Grace like bullets. Because they were true and they were devastating. She did care about Sophia. Despite the operation, despite the mission, despite everything. Sophia, what I'm about to tell you needs to stay between us. Can you promise me that, for your own safety? The girl nodded. Your father is involved in things that are illegal and harmful. I can't give you details, but tomorrow night, things are going to change, and when they do, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Who are you really? Grace hesitated. Broke the cardinal rule of undercover work. Someone who's trying to stop people from getting hurt. That's all you need to know. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then, You're a cop, FBI or something. I can't confirm that. You just did. Sophia's voice was shaking. Does my mom know? No. Will you hurt them, my parents? I'm going to make sure your father faces justice. Your mother. I believe your mother doesn't know the full truth. She'll be protected. And me? You'll be safe. I promise you that. Tears were streaming down Sophia's face now. My whole life is a lie. No, your life is yours. Your father's choices aren't your responsibility. You're a good kid, Sophia, and you deserve better than this. Grace drove the rest of the way to the estate in silence. Let Sophia process. When they arrived, the girl got out without saying anything. But at the door she turned back. Grace, tomorrow night, whatever happens, thank you. That night, Marcus Rourke knocked on Grace's door, her small bedroom in the staff wing. 700 square feet, comfortable but isolated, no windows, one door, easy to trap someone in. Grace opened the door in pajamas, playing the role. Mr. Rourke, is everything okay? Can I come in? Every instinct screamed danger, but saying no would confirm his suspicions. Of course. Marcus entered, looked around the room, at the photos of fake children, at the romance novels on the nightstand chosen because that's what Grace Mitchell would read, at the TV playing a cooking show on low volume. I need to ask you some questions, Grace. Okay. 3 years ago, you applied for this job through an agency, Premier Staffing Services. Is that correct? Yes. I called them today. They have no record of you. Grace's heart rate spiked, but her face remained calm. That's strange. Maybe their records are perfect. Every other employee they've placed, every job they've filled, all documented, except you. It's like your file was erased. I don't understand. The references you provided. I called them too. One disconnected number. One business that closed 2 years ago. One person who doesn't remember working with you. Grace needed to pivot. Fast. Mr. Rourke, I don't know what's happening, but who are you really? The question hung in the air. Grace saw the weapon at Marcus's hip, saw his hand resting casually near it, saw the calculation in his eyes. He knew. He absolutely knew. I'm Grace Mitchell. I've been Mr. Castellano's housekeeper for 3 years. If there's been some kind of identity theft, federal agent? Marcus asked. DEA, FBI. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus moved faster than she expected. Had her against the wall, forearm across her throat, weapon drawn and pressed under her chin before she could react. Last chance, he said quietly. Who sent you? Grace's hand was 3 inches from the panic button in her apron, 3 inches from a tactical team that would storm the building in 90 seconds. 3 inches from blowing the whole operation 12 hours before the shipment arrived. She made a decision. Nobody sent me, Grace gasped. Please, I need this job. My kids, your kids don't exist. I checked the schools you said they attended. No enrollment records, no Grace Mitchell with children in those districts. So let's try again. Who are you? Grace drove her knee into Marcus's groin, used his moment of surprise to break his grip, grabbed his weapon hand and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. They fought in the small room. Silent, brutal. Marcus was former Special Forces. Grace was DEA tactical. They were evenly matched, but he was bigger. Grace took 3 hits that would leave bruises, gave back 4. Ended up with Marcus on the ground, and his own weapon pointed at his head. Special Agent Grace Chen, she said. Drug Enforcement Administration. You're under arrest. Marcus laughed. You just blew 3 years of cover to arrest me, one security guard. Instead of waiting for Castellano, he was right. She'd made a catastrophic tactical error. You were going to kill me, Grace said. I was going to confirm you were federal and report to Victor. He would have killed you tomorrow during the shipment. Quietly, no witnesses, no evidence. Marcus's smile was cold. But now you've assaulted me, pulled a weapon on me. The second I don't check in, this whole estate goes into lockdown. You'll never make it out. Grace pressed the panic button 3 times. I don't need to make it out, she said. I just need to survive 90 seconds. She heard it in the distance. Helicopters, vehicles, the tactical team she'd hoped she wouldn't need. Marcus heard it too. His face went pale. You just signed Sophia's death warrant. Victor will use her as a hostage. Grace's blood went cold. She hadn't thought. She ran, left Marcus on the floor, sprinted through the mansion towards Sophia's bedroom, heard shouting downstairs, heard Victor's voice screaming for his security team, heard Elena crying. Sophia's bedroom door was locked. Sophia, it's Grace. Open the door. Grace? The girl's voice was terrified. What's happening? Open the door right now. The lock clicked. Sophia stood there in pajamas, phone in hand, face white with fear. Grace pulled her into the hallway, just as gunfire erupted downstairs. The tactical team breaching. Victor's security responding. The operation she'd spent 3 years building collapsing into chaos 12 hours too early. Stay behind me, Grace said. She still had Marcus's weapon. She hoped she wouldn't need it. They moved through the house, Grace clearing corners with training she'd hidden for 3 years. Sophia crying behind her, the sounds of the raid echoing through halls that had been quiet for so long. They made it to the main staircase. Saw the tactical team securing the first floor. Saw Victor on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, face twisted with rage. He saw Grace, saw the weapon in her hand, saw his daughter behind her. You, he said, you were in my home, you ate at my table, my wife trusted you, my daughter loved you, and you were lying the whole time. Yes, Grace said, I was. 3 years? 3 years. Why? Grace descended the stairs, Sophia's hand gripping the back of her shirt. Because you're killing people, thousands of them, with drugs you import and distribute for profit. And someone had to stop you. Elena appeared from the kitchen, also in zip ties, makeup streaked with tears. Grace, I don't understand. You're police? Federal agent, DEA. I'm sorry, Elena, but your husband is a drug trafficker, and I've been gathering evidence to prove it. Victor laughed. Evidence? What evidence? You've got nothing. My lawyers will have me out by morning. I have 3 years of documentation, Grace said. Financial records, communication logs, meeting recordings, witness testimony. And tomorrow night's shipment, 200 kilos of fentanyl arriving at Port Newark. Your Russian partners, your paid-off inspectors, your distribution network, all of it. Victor's face changed. Tomorrow's shipment, how did you? You told me to prepare dinner for 12 people at 10 p.m. You told me in front of your wife and daughter. You trusted me so completely that you talked about business in front of the help. That's how I know. Her handler, Special Agent Martinez, appeared at the door. Older, tired, angry but also proud. Agent Chen, you're supposed to be dead. Change of plans. I can see that. Martinez looked at Sophia, still clinging to Grace's shirt. Get the girl somewhere safe. We'll debrief later. Grace turned to Sophia. This is Agent Martinez. He's going to make sure you're protected, okay? What about my mom? Grace looked at Elena. At the woman who'd been kind to her for 3 years, who'd trusted her, who was about to learn that her entire life was built on death and lies. "Your mum didn't know," Grace said. "We can prove that. She'll be questioned, but she won't be charged, I promise." Sophia let go of Grace's shirt, let another agent lead her away. But at the door, she turned back. "You kept your promise. You kept me safe. I always will." The operation had gone sideways, but it wasn't over. Grace sat in the tactical van 2 blocks from the Castellano estate, watching federal agents process the scene. They had Victor, they had his financial records. They had enough evidence to charge him with multiple felonies. But they didn't have Thursday's shipment. And without that, they didn't have his full distribution network. They didn't have Dmitry Volkov. They didn't have Senator Thompson. They didn't have the dozen other players who would simply scatter and rebuild if Victor went down alone. Martinez sat across from her, reviewing the operation's timeline. "You went off script. Marcus made me. You should have extracted. You had the panic button. I didn't have the evidence. Not all of it. Not enough to take down the whole organization. So instead you blew your cover, nearly got killed, traumatized a 16-year-old girl, and we arrested one guy 12 hours before we could have arrested 20. Grace met his eyes. "Victor knows about tomorrow's shipment. He'll cancel it, warn his partners. We'll never get another chance like this." "Exactly. Which is why this operation is over. We'll build a case with what we have. It'll take years, but, or we don't tell him we know about the shipment." Martinez stared at her. "He's in federal custody. He's arrested. How exactly do we not tell him? We let him make bail. You've lost your mind. Think about it. Victor's lawyers are already filing motions. They'll have him out by morning, maybe sooner. He'll go home, assess the damage, and make a decision. Does he run? Does he fight? Does he try to salvage his operation? And you think he'll go forward with the shipment? I think his ego won't let him walk away. I think he'll see this as a setback, not an ending. I think he'll cancel the dinner party, but keep the shipment, because he's already paid for it, and his partners expect delivery." Martinez shook his head. "That's a massive gamble. If you're wrong, we lose him entirely. If I'm right, we get everyone, the full network. Not just Victor, but every person who shows up to receive product. And if he figures out we know, if he realizes this is a setup, then we arrest him again and take what we can get. But right now, we have one advantage. Victor thinks I'm just a federal agent who got lucky. He doesn't know I've been documenting his operation for 3 years. He doesn't know I have copies of his financial records, his communications, his full organizational structure. He thinks we have enough for 1 arrest. He doesn't know we have enough for 50. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "You want to go back in? Not as Grace Mitchell. That cover's burned, but as someone else. Someone Victor won't recognize or suspect." "Who?" "Port inspector. One of the ones he thinks he owns. We replace the real inspector with me. I document the shipment arrival. I identify everyone involved. And when they start distributing product, we take them all down at once. Victor will have security everywhere. If they recognize you, they won't. They've only ever seen me as a middle-aged housekeeper in an apron and sensible shoes. Put me in a Port Authority uniform with different hair and a clipboard, I'm invisible again." Martinez pulled up the case file on his laptop. The inspector Victor paid off. Frank Delgado, 53 years old. Port Authority for 22 years. Takes 50,000 per shipment to look the other way. Bring him in. Offer him immunity in exchange for cooperation. He wears a wire, documents the bribe, then calls in sick Thursday night. I take his place. This is insane. This is the only way to finish what I started. Martinez rubbed his face. If this goes wrong, if you get burned again, I can't protect you. Victor's lawyers are already screaming about entrapment. If we push too far, we won't. We'll do this by the book. Frank Delgado cooperates willingly. I assume his identity only after he's out of the picture. We document everything in real time. No illegal searches, no entrapment. Just good police work. And Sophia, Elena? They're material witnesses now. They'll be in protective custody. Good. Keep them safe. Keep them far away from Thursday night. Martinez closed his laptop. I'll run it up the chain. But Chen, this is your last operation. After this, you're done with undercover work. 3 years is too long. You've lost perspective. I haven't lost anything. I'm finishing the job. Frank Delgado was brought in at midnight. Port inspector with a mortgage he couldn't afford and a gambling problem that made him vulnerable to bribes. He sat in the interrogation room, looking like a man who knew his life was over. Grace entered wearing her real clothes. Federal agent attire. Let him see exactly who she was. Mr. Delgado, I'm Special Agent Chen, DEA. You're not under arrest yet. But you will be, unless you cooperate. I want a lawyer. You can have one. And then you'll be charged with accepting bribes, facilitating drug trafficking, and accessory to distribution of a controlled substance. Federal charges. Mandatory minimum 20 years. You'll be 73 when you get out. Frank's face crumpled. I have kids, a wife. They don't know. They're about to find out. Unless you help us. How? Thursday night, Port Newark. 200 kilos of fentanyl arriving on the stellar horizon. Container number TCNU 927645. You're scheduled to inspect it. Instead, you're going to wear a wire. Document Victor Castellano offering you $50,000 and then call in sick. I'll take your place and document the entire distribution operation. If Victor finds out I cooperated, he'll kill me. If Victor finds out, he'll be in federal prison for life. Your family will be in witness protection. You'll be safe. What do I get? Immunity from prosecution. Clean record, fresh start. But only if you do exactly what we tell you. Frank looked at his hands. At the wedding ring he probably wouldn't get to keep. At the future, collapsing in front of him. Okay, he said finally, I'll do it. But you have to promise my family stays safe. They will. You have my word. Thursday morning, Victor Castellano made bail. $5 million. Posted by his lawyers within hours of his arrest. By noon, he was back at his estate, surrounded by attorneys and security personnel who weren't Marcus Rourke. Marcus was in federal custody, facing charges of his own. Conspiracy, obstruction, accessory to drug trafficking. His cooperation was unlikely. Former military types rarely flipped, but his arrest had created a vacuum in Victor's security apparatus that would take time to fill. Grace watched from the surveillance van as Victor paced his office, phone to his ear, barking orders. The audio feed was crystal clear. He hadn't found all her hidden cameras. He'd found some of the obvious ones, but not the backup systems she'd installed over 3 years. The shipment proceeds as planned, Victor said. I don't care what the lawyers say. We've already paid for it. Our partners expect delivery. If we cancel now, we look weak. The person on the other end, Dmitry Volkov, based on voice analysis, responded in Russian. The translator in Grace's ear converted it. The arrest changes things. Perhaps we should wait, regroup. No, we move forward. The feds got lucky with the housekeeper. They don't know about tonight. They don't know about the port. We proceed. Grace smiled. Victor's ego was exactly as predictable as she'd calculated. Martinez appeared in the van doorway. Frank Delgado just called Victor. Confirmed he'll be at the port tonight. Victor paid him the 50,000 as scheduled. We have it on wire. And Delgado? In protective custody with his family. As of 6 p.m., he's officially on sick leave. You're his replacement. Grace looked at the Port Authority uniform laid out on the bench beside her. Frank Delgado's credentials. His ID badge with Grace's photo digitally inserted. His inspection tablet with access to the port's security systems. How do I look? Martinez studied her. Grace had changed everything. Her hair was now short and dark, a wig that transformed her completely. Glasses with clear lenses that altered the shape of her face. No makeup. The kind of tired, middle-aged appearance that made people look away instead of at you. You look like a Port Authority inspector who's been doing this job too long and doesn't care anymore. Perfect. Port Newark at 9:45 p.m. was a maze of shipping containers and machinery. Grace arrived in Frank Delgado's truck, seized from his house and outfitted with additional surveillance equipment. She wore his uniform, carried his credentials, and had a tactical team positioned half a mile away, waiting for her signal. The Stella Horizon was a cargo ship registered in Panama, legitimate on paper, but Grace knew that container TCNU 927645 held something that wasn't on any manifest. She approached the security checkpoint. The guard, one of Victor's paid assets, according to Frank's testimony, barely looked at her credentials. Delgado, you're here for the special inspection. That's right, container 927645, Bay 7, they're waiting for you. Grace drove through the port, following the GPS coordinates on Frank's tablet. Bay 7 was isolated, away from the main shipping routes. The kind of place where illegal transactions happened with minimal witnesses. 3 black SUVs were already there, men in expensive suits standing next to a refrigerated container. Grace recognized Dmitry Volkov from surveillance photos. The others she didn't know by name, but she recognized their type. Distributors. Middle management in an organization that stretched from Russia to New York to every corner of the East Coast. Grace parked, got out with Frank's inspection tablet, approached the group with the tired indifference of someone who'd been paid to look the other way 100 times before. Delgado, one of the men said. We've been waiting. Traffic, Grace said, affecting Frank's slight Brooklyn accent. Let's make this quick. I got another inspection in 20 minutes. Dmitry stepped forward. He was older than his photos suggested. 60-something, gray hair, cold eyes that had seen too much death to be impressed by anything. The usual arrangement? Dmitry asked. Grace held out her hand. 50,000, cash. One of the other men handed her an envelope. Grace opened it, counted the bills quickly, and pocketed it. The wire she wore hidden in the badge on her chest captured everything. Containers clean, Grace said, making a show of checking her tablet. No inspection needed. You're clear to transport. Not yet. Dmitry gestured to the container. Open it. I want to verify contents before we move. This wasn't part of the plan. Frank had said they never opened containers at the port. They transported them sealed, and opened them at the distribution warehouse. But Dmitri wasn't following the usual protocol. He was being cautious, smart, probably because of Victor's arrest. Grace had two choices: refuse and blow her cover, or open the container and hope the tactical team could see what was inside via her body camera. She unlocked the container. The door swung open with a metallic screech. Inside, wooden crates, dozens of them, stacked floor to ceiling, each one stenciled with pharmaceutical company logos that were probably fake. Dmitri gestured to his men. They pulled out one crate, opened it. Inside, vacuum-sealed packages of white powder, 200 kilos of fentanyl divided into transportable units. Acceptable, Dmitri said. Load it up. His men began transferring crates to the SUVs. Grace stood back, pretending to be disinterested. But her body camera captured every face, every vehicle license plate, every package transferred. She was about to signal the tactical team when headlights appeared in the distance. Another vehicle approaching. Grace's heart sank. Victor Castellano stepped out of a Mercedes. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was out on bail. He should have been home, maintaining distance from the operation to give himself plausible deniability. But ego had brought him to the port. The need to see his shipment arrive. The need to control everything personally. He walked toward the group, scanning faces. His eyes passed over Grace, just another port inspector, invisible and forgettable, and settled on Dmitri. Problems? Victor asked. No problems, just being cautious after your arrest. The arrest changes nothing. We proceed as planned. And the federal agent, the housekeeper? Victor's face darkened. Handled. She won't be an issue. Grace's pulse quickened. What did he mean, handled? Sophia and Elena were in protective custody. Marcus was detained. Who was he talking about? Then she understood. He thought she was still at the estate. He'd sent people to kill her. They'd find an empty room and realize too late that she'd left. But Victor didn't know she was standing 15 feet away. Inspector, Dmitri called to Grace. You're dismissed. We'll handle transport from here. Grace nodded. Started walking toward Frank's truck. She was almost there when Victor spoke. Wait. Grace froze. Turned slowly. Yes. Victor was staring at her. Not with recognition, with suspicion. Have we met before? Ah. No, sir. I just worked the port. You look familiar. I got one of those faces. Grace forced a laugh. People say that all the time. Victor stepped closer. Studied her face. Grace's hand moved toward the panic signal in her pocket. 3 clicks and the tactical team would swarm. But if she did that now, Victor would run. His partners would scatter. They'd lose half the organization. Your voice, Victor said slowly. I know that voice. Grace's mind raced. Her voice. She'd changed her appearance, but voices were harder to disguise completely. And Victor had heard Grace Mitchell speak every day for 3 years. I don't think so, Grace said. But Victor's expression had changed. Recognition dawning, horror, rage. You, the housekeeper. Grace. Grace pulled her weapon. Everyone. On the ground. Now. Chaos erupted. Dmitri's men reached for guns. Victor dove behind the Mercedes. Grace fired twice warning shots, not lethal, and hit the panic button. Gunfire erupted from Dmitri's crew. Grace took cover behind Frank's truck. Bullets punctured metal. She returned fire, aiming for tires, for weapons, trying not to kill anyone because corpses couldn't testify. She heard helicopters, saw tactical team vehicles screaming toward the port. but they were 30 seconds away. 30 seconds she had to survive. A bullet shattered the truck's window. Glass rained down. Grace rolled, came up firing, dropped one of Dimitri's men with a leg shot. He went down screaming. Victor was running toward the container. Grace realized what he was doing, destroying evidence. He pulled something from his jacket, a thermite grenade, military grade, designed to burn through metal and incinerate anything inside. Victor, don't. He pulled the pin, threw it into the container full of fentanyl. Grace ran, grabbed Victor, tackled him to the ground as the thermite ignited. The container erupted in white-hot flames. 200 kilos of fentanyl going up in smoke, literally. The air filled with toxic fumes. Gas masks, Grace screamed into her radio. Fentanyl burning, everyone needs masks. The tactical team arrived wearing hazmat gear. They swarmed the scene, subdued Dimitri's men, cuffed Victor, pulled Grace away from the burning container before she inhaled too much. Martinez appeared, gas mask on, fury in his eyes. "You could have died, but I didn't." Grace coughed, her lungs burned. "Did we get everyone?" "We got 15 people, including Volkov, including Victor. But the product is gone." "I know." Grace watched the container burn, 200 kilos of death turning to ash. "But we have them. We have the transaction. We have the wire recordings. We have everything." Senator Thompson wasn't here. He will be. Once Dimitri flips. Once we offer him a deal. Grace pulled off the wig. Let her real hair fall. Let herself stop being Frank Delgado. "It's over, Martinez. 3 years. But it's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. The debriefing took 3 days. Grace sat in a windowless room at DEA headquarters, answering questions from supervisors, lawyers, and internal affairs investigators who wanted to know why she'd gone off script, why she'd blown her cover early, why she'd nearly gotten killed at a port when she should have extracted. "You endangered yourself unnecessarily," the IA investigator said. 40-something, white, male, never worked undercover a day in his life. "You had enough evidence to arrest Castellano. You didn't need to risk the port operation." "I needed the full network," Grace said for the 10th time. "One arrest doesn't stop the flow. We needed everyone. And you got 15 arrests, congratulations. But you also destroyed 200 kilos of evidence that could have been used in trial. Evidence that was burning people's lungs if we'd tried to preserve it. Victor Castellano chose to destroy his own product. That's on him, not me." The investigator wasn't satisfied. But Martinez, sitting in the corner, finally spoke up. Agent Chen acted within operational parameters. Her decisions were sound given the circumstances. "This interview is over." After they left, Martinez looked at Grace with exhaustion. "You're being recommended for commendation. And early retirement. 3 years undercover is too long. You've lost objectivity. You got emotionally involved with the target's family. I protected an innocent girl. You broke protocol to warn her. You could have compromised the entire operation, but I didn't. This time." Martinez sat down across from her. "Grace, you're one of the best agents I've ever worked with. But this operation broke something in you. You're not seeing it, but I am. You need time, distance, therapy, probably. I'm fine. You're not, and that's okay. What you did living a lie for 3 years, earning people's trust while planning to destroy them, that takes a toll. You can't just go back to normal after that." Grace was quiet, because he was right. She'd been Grace Mitchell for so long that Special Agent Grace Chen felt like the disguise now. She dreamed about folding laundry, woke up thinking she needed to prepare breakfast for a family that wasn't hers, reached for an apron that no longer existed. "What happens now?" Grace asked. "Now, you testify. Victor's trial starts in 6 months. Dimitri's already negotiating a plea deal. Senator Thompson resigned yesterday, got ahead of the indictment. 12 others are being arraigned next week. And Elena? Sophia? Elena filed for divorce. She's cooperating fully. Turns out she genuinely didn't know about the drug operation. She thought Victor's money came from real estate. And Sophia?" Martinez hesitated. "She's asking to see you. They met in a safe house in New Jersey, neutral territory. Sophia sat on a couch that wasn't hers, in a room with no personality, displaced from the only life she'd known. Grace entered in civilian clothes. Not Grace Mitchell's Target wardrobe. Not Special Agent Chen's professional attire. Just jeans and a sweater. Someone in between. "Hi," Grace said. "Hi." Sophia looked different, older. The innocence that wealth had preserved was gone, replaced by the hard knowledge of who her father really was. They sat in silence for a moment. "I don't know what to call you," Sophia said finally. "Grace Mitchell isn't real, but I don't know who Grace Chen is." "I don't either anymore," Grace admitted. 3 years is a long time to be someone else. "Did you mean any of it? The conversations we had, the college advice, the times you listened when I was upset?" "Yes, all of it. But you were lying about who you were." "I was lying about my job, but I wasn't lying about caring about you. That was real." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "My dad is going to prison for life. My mom is in witness protection. My college fund is frozen because it's proceeds of criminal activity. My friends won't talk to me because their parents don't want them associated with a drug dealer's daughter. And you, the only person I trusted besides my mom, you were fake." "I'm not fake. I'm complicated. There's a difference, is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks the same." Grace didn't have an answer for that. Sophia wiped her eyes. "The agent said you saved my life, that my dad's people were going to use me as leverage, that you got me out before they could." "That's true. So I owe you for that." "You don't owe me anything." "Then why am I here? Why did you want to see me?" "Because I needed you to know that everything I said to you about college, about your future, about being more than your father's daughter, I meant it. Your father's choices aren't your burden. You're smart. You're kind. You deserve a life that isn't defined by his crimes." Easy for you to say. You get to go back to your real life. I don't have one anymore. "Neither do I," Grace said quietly. "I spent 3 years being someone I'm not, and now I don't know how to be who I was before. So we're both starting over. That's something we have in common." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "Will you testify at his trial?" "Yes." "Will you tell the truth? All of it?" "Yes. Even the parts that make you look bad, like lying to us for 3 years." "Especially those parts." Sophia nodded. "Good. Because he deserves to know what it's like when someone you trust destroys you." The trial was a media circus. Federal prosecutors brought 147 charges against Victor Castellano. Conspiracy, distribution, money laundering, witness tampering, attempted murder. And at the center of it all, Grace Chen's testimony. She sat on the witness stand in a federal courthouse, wearing a professional suit, looking like someone who'd never folded a billionaire's laundry or served coffee to criminals. Victor sat at the defense table, flanked by 6 lawyers who'd cost him millions. The prosecutor was a woman named Janet Reeves, 45, sharp, relentless. Agent Chen, how long were you undercover in the Castellano household? 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. And during that time, you documented evidence of what, exactly? Drug trafficking. Specifically, the importation and distribution of fentanyl through a network spanning from Russia to the eastern seaboard of the United States. Mr. Castellano was the primary coordinator of this operation. How do you know this? Because I lived in his home. I had access to his office, his communications, his meetings. I documented financial transactions, recorded conversations, and identified 17 members of his distribution network. Victor's lead attorney stood. Objection. This testimony is the result of an illegal search. Agent Chen gained access to my client's private property under false pretenses. The judge, an older black woman named Harriet Simmons, who'd been on the bench for 30 years, looked unimpressed. Counselor, your client hired Agent Chen as an employee. She had legitimate access to his property. Objection overruled. Janet Reeves continued. Agent Chen, the defense has argued that you entrapped Mr. Castellano, that you manipulated situations to make him appear guilty. How do you respond? I didn't manipulate anything. I observed. Mr. Castellano conducted his illegal business openly in front of his staff because he believed we were too unimportant to matter. He discussed shipments while I served coffee. He negotiated deals while I cleaned his office. He didn't entrap himself, he exposed himself by assuming that people he considered beneath him were invisible. The courtroom was silent. Did you ever feel conflicted about your role? Janet asked. About earning the trust of Mr. Castellano's family while planning to arrest him? Every single day. Can you elaborate? Grace looked at Victor, then at Elena and Sophia, sitting in the gallery. Mrs. Castellano was kind to me. She treated me with respect when she didn't have to. Sophia trusted me with things she didn't tell her mother. I ate dinner with them. I listened to their problems. I became part of their lives. And yes, that created conflict. Because I knew that when this ended, they would feel betrayed. Do you regret your actions? No, because Victor Castellano was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people. And stopping that was more important than my comfort or his family's feelings. Sometimes doing the right thing means betraying people who trusted you. That doesn't make it wrong. It makes it necessary. Victor's attorney stood again. Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine. Proceed. The attorney, a man named Gregory Walsh, expensive suit, slicked back hair, approached the witness stand like a shark circling. Agent Chen, you lived in my client's home for 3 years. Yes. You were paid a salary. Yes. You received health insurance, holiday bonuses, time off. Yes. My client treated you well. He treated Grace Mitchell well. He didn't know I was Special Agent Chen. But you knew. You knew you were deceiving a man who'd shown you nothing but kindness and generosity. I knew I was investigating a drug trafficker who'd shown his customers nothing but death and addiction. Walsh smiled coldly. You're very good at justifying your lies, Agent Chen. Tell me, how many times did you lie to my client? Every day for 3 years. And his wife, how many times did you lie to her? Every day for 3 years. And his daughter, a 16-year-old girl who confided in you, every day for 3 years. So you're admitting that you're a habitual liar. I'm admitting that I'm a federal agent who maintained cover during an undercover operation. That's not lying, that's doing my job. And when you do your job, do you always get emotionally involved with your targets' families? Do you always warn them before arrests? Do you always compromise operations by breaking protocol? Grace felt the trap. Walsh had done his homework. He knew about her warning Sophia, knew about the IA investigation, knew she'd bent rules. I protected an innocent minor from being used as a hostage by her father's criminal associates. If that's compromising the operation, then yes, I compromised it. And I'd do it again. So you admit you put your personal feelings above your professional obligations. I put a child's safety above procedural purity. There's a difference. Walsh was about to respond when Judge Simmons interrupted. Mr. Walsh, I think we've established that Agent Chen cares about innocent people not getting hurt. Is there a point to this line of questioning? Your Honor, I'm trying to establish that Agent Chen's testimony is unreliable because she's demonstrated a pattern of emotional decision-making and rule-breaking. All you've established is that she's a human being with a conscience. Move on. The cross-examination continued for 2 more hours, but Walsh couldn't break Grace because everything she'd said was true. She had lied, she had deceived, she had broken protocol, but she'd also stopped one of the largest fentanyl operations in the country. When it was over, Janet Reeves called her final witness, Frank Delgado, the port inspector who'd cooperated. He testified about the bribes, about the $50,000 Victor paid per shipment, about the years of looking the other way while death was imported and distributed. And then he said something Grace hadn't expected. I knew it was wrong, every time, but I told myself it wasn't my problem, that I was just doing my job, that someone else would stop them if it was really important. Frank looked directly at Victor, but nobody did, until Agent Chen. She risked her life to stop what I'd been helping happen for years, and I'll regret that for the rest of mine. The prosecution rested. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Grace waited in a hotel room, watching cable news dissect the trial. Legal experts argued about entrapment, about undercover operations, about whether Grace's 3-year deception constituted legitimate law enforcement or government overreach. Martinez called on day 3. However this goes, you did good work. We'll see. No, I'm telling you, good work, the kind that saves lives. Whatever the verdict. On day 4, the jury came back, guilty. On 142 of 147 counts, Victor Castellano was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Dmitry Volkov flipped, provided testimony against 17 other distributors, and received 20 years. Senator Thompson resigned and pled guilty to corruption charges, 10 years. 12 other members of the organization received sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years. And Grace Chen received a commendation, a promotion she didn't want, and a mandatory 6-month leave to recover from the psychological toll of extended undercover work. 6 months later, Grace sat in a therapist's office in Virginia, talking about laundry. I still dream about it, Grace said, folding fitted sheets, organizing Mr. Castellano's sock drawer, preparing meals I'll never serve. Dr. Patricia Morrison, no relation to James Morrison from her previous case, listened without judgment, 60 years old. Kind eyes, patient. You spent 3 years building an identity. It's normal for that identity to linger. But Grace Mitchell wasn't real. She was real to you. You lived her life. You inhabited her thoughts. You made her decisions. Just because she was a cover doesn't mean she wasn't real in some way. So what do I do? How do I stop being her? Maybe you don't. Maybe you accept that Grace Mitchell is part of who Grace Chen is now. That 3 years of your life happened, even if they happened while you were pretending to be someone else. Grace thought about that. About Sophia, who'd sent one email in 6 months. Short, distant, but not hostile. I got into Columbia. Early decision. Scholarship covered everything since Dad's money is frozen. Starting fresh. Thanks for the advice. Even if you lied about everything else, that part was real. Grace had cried, reading that email. Because it meant Sophia was going to be okay. That Victor Castellano's daughter wouldn't be defined by his crimes. Have you thought about what's next, Doctor? Morrison asked. They want me to train new undercover agents, teach them how to maintain cover, how to handle the psychological toll. Do you want to do that? I don't know. Part of me wants to never go undercover again, but another part knows I'm good at it, that I can teach people how to survive it. Both things can be true. Grace looked out the window. At the normal world where people didn't spend 3 years lying to everyone they met, where identities were simple and lives were linear. I got a letter, Grace said, from Elena Castellano, Victor's wife. Ex-wife now. Divorce was finalized last month. She's living in Florida, teaching piano, using her maiden name. What did the letter say? Grace pulled it from her bag. She'd read it dozens of times. Dear Grace, I don't know what to call you. Grace Mitchell doesn't exist. Grace Chen is a stranger, so I'll just call you Grace and hope that's enough. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I feel betrayed in ways I can't fully articulate. You came into my home, earned my trust, became someone I considered a friend, and it was all a lie. But you saved my daughter's life. You exposed my husband's crimes before they destroyed more families. You did what I should have done years ago. You looked closely at the life I was living and recognized it was built on death. I didn't want to see it. I chose not to see it. I liked the money and the houses and the comfort too much to ask difficult questions. That makes me complicit. Maybe not legally, but morally. So this letter is 3 things. First, thank you for protecting Sophia, for doing what I couldn't. Second, I'm sorry that you had to lie for 3 years, that you had to carry that weight. That must have been unbearable. Third, I forgive you. I don't know if you need that, but I'm giving it anyway. You were both Grace Mitchell and Grace Chen. Both versions saved my daughter. Both versions matter. Be well, Elena Romano, not Castellano anymore. Grace folded the letter carefully. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. Maybe that's not for you to decide. Maybe forgiveness is something other people give when they're ready, whether you think you deserve it or not. 3 months later, Grace stood in front of a room full of DEA recruits. 23 men and women who'd volunteered for undercover training, who wanted to learn how to infiltrate criminal organizations, how to maintain cover, how to survive. My name is Special Agent Grace Chen, she began. For 3 years, I lived as someone else. I had a different name, a different job, a different life. And I'm going to teach you how to do the same thing without losing yourself in the process. She told them about Grace Mitchell, about folding laundry and serving coffee and being invisible, about earning trust she planned to betray, about the psychological toll of living a lie. Some of you will do this for months, some for years, and when it's over, you'll discover that the person you were before doesn't quite fit anymore. You'll dream about your cover identity. You'll answer to a name that isn't yours. You'll miss people who never really knew you. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. How do you deal with that? Honestly, I'm still figuring it out. But I can tell you this, what we do matters. The lies we tell, the trust we betray, the years we spend being someone else, it matters because it stops real harm, it saves real lives. And that has to be enough. She showed them the case file. Victor Castellano's operation, the 17 arrests, the lives saved by removing 200 kilos of fentanyl from circulation. One undercover operation, 3 years of my life, and thousands of people who'll never know they were saved because Victor Castellano's drugs never made it to their streets. That's the trade, your identity for their lives. You have to decide if that's worth it. After the lecture, a young black woman approached, 26, eager. Reminded Grace of herself 8 years ago. Agent Chen, I have a question. Go ahead. Do you regret it? Going undercover for 3 years? Grace thought about Sophia at Columbia, about Elena teaching piano in Florida, about the families who'd never lose someone to Victor's drugs, about Grace Mitchell, who'd existed for 3 years and would exist in her dreams forever. No, Grace said, I don't regret it. It cost me things I'll never get back. But some things are worth the cost. What things? Justice, truth. The knowledge that monsters don't win just because they're rich and connected and think they're untouchable. Grace smiled. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be underestimated. Be invisible. Be the person they never see coming. Like a housewife. Exactly like a housewife. That evening, Grace returned to her apartment. Not the small room in the Castellano staff wing, not the safe house where she'd debriefed. Her own place, finally. She made dinner pasta, simple, nothing elaborate, and ate while watching a cooking show. Not because she needed to learn anything. Just because Grace Mitchell had loved cooking shows and apparently that habit had stuck. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Classes start Monday. Nervous but excited. Mom's doing better. She asked me to tell you hi, and thanks. From both of us. Grace texted back. Good luck. You're going to do great. And Sophia, you were never your father's daughter. You were always just Sophia. Remember that. G. The response came quickly. Which G? Mitchell or Chen? Grace smiled. Both. They're the same person now. Just took me a while to figure that out. She set down her phone, looked around her apartment, at the life she was rebuilding, at the person she was becoming, not Grace Mitchell, not entirely Grace Chen, but something in between. Someone who'd spent 3 years undercover and came out the other side knowing that sometimes the greatest deception is forgetting that justice requires sacrifice, and that sacrifice doesn't make you a liar. It makes you someone who cared enough to pay the cost.